Now to that breaking news in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Late this afternoon, a partial verdict was handed down in the case. Richard Schoenstein, he's the vice chair of litigation practice at Tarter, Krinsky and Drogan. Richard, thanks for the time. We know the jury has reached a partial verdict. They cannot agree on the top charge of racketeering conspiracy. You've told me before this is the broadest charge, the most difficult charge to prove. What do you make of this impasse where we are right now?
Well, I'm not totally surprised. I mean, I think this is definitely one of the outcomes that we saw potentially coming. There are four charges that they have a verdict on are the less serious charges. The RICO charge is the most serious, the most complex, the most elements, the most difficult to prove, and frankly, the most confusing. So it doesn't surprise me at all that that would be the count they are currently undecided on.
And Richard, can you tell us, I mean, it seems like these charges not only complicated, but there are many of them, and yet the jury is back already. Can you walk us through what happens next with this jury? You presume that the judge is going to send them back, right?
Right, I presume so. It sounds like I've been following along virtually, as I'm sure you guys are. It sounds like the judge is going to give what we call an Allen charge. That's an instruction to the jury that they need to go back into that deliberation room and try to come up with a verdict. That's where the judge tells the jury there's nobody else who's going to be better prepared to decide this case than you are. No, we're not going to get another jury and they're going to be better at it. You really need to try to come to a verdict, and they will make them go back and deliberate more. And currently, I don't think we're going to find out what the verdict is on the other four counts until they reach a decision on RICO.
Richard, you're a very experienced litigator yourself. How likely is it that a jury says we're deadlocked on one charge, they get sent back into the jury room, and then somehow they are able to come up with a unanimous verdict? Does that happen?
It does happen. I mean, it definitely happens in cases that these Allen charge, or sometimes we call it the dynamite charge, is successful and prompts a jury to come up with a verdict. Here, I think, though, there have been pretty serious signs of disagreement within this jury from the very beginning of deliberations, and that's carried forward the whole time. So I don't know. I don't think I'd put a lot of money on them reaching a verdict on the RICO charge, but it's definitely worth making them try.
Now, we may have gotten a hint of where this jury was going early on when we seemed to have an issue with one of the jurors. I believe it was juror number 25. How much does that play in, just the personalities of the jury, Richard?
Oh, it plays in a lot. That's why jury selection is so hugely important in every case, and in a case like this. You want to get people in there who have an open mind, who will listen to the evidence, who will listen to the witnesses, and will render a fair and just verdict, whatever that is. And if you have people who are ensconced from the first moments of the trial, or even from the first moment of deliberation, it makes it very difficult. And there have been situations jurors can get into it with each other, personalities can clash, that too can make it difficult.
When the jury handed down that note around 4:20 this afternoon saying they had reached a partial verdict, even the defense said, we will not accept a partial verdict. We want them to go back and continue deliberating. Why would they want that? Wouldn't a partial verdict suggest there might be mixed guilty, not guilty? Can you kind of walk us through why the defense would want them to go back and rule on every single count?
Okay, so first of all, and I hate prognosticating verdicts before we get them because you're wrong a lot of the time, but I assume that they have found him guilty on some of these counts, because it would be odd if they found him not guilty on the four simpler counts and we're still debating RICO. That would be kind of backwards. So I assume there's a guilty verdict in there somewhere, and they're trying to figure out if he is also guilty of this more serious, more complicated crime. I was a little surprised the defense pushed for it. Sometimes defenses our defendants are happy to get out of there with a hung jury, but I do think he probably doesn't want to go through this again and maybe wants to get whatever verdict there is.
Yeah, there may also be an issue of what your defense lawyers love to say, jury nullification, that regardless of what the facts of the law are, people were turned off by seeing that video, which he wasn't charged with domestic violence, as he said in his defense. When you look back, this defense said, you know what, we're not even putting up witnesses. We're just going to go on our cross-examination. How crucial is that right now when you're looking at what this jury is doing?
Well, I think the defense did a great job in this trial from what I've seen, and I think they did the best they could. They didn't have any witnesses who were going to come in. You know, he wasn't saying he had an alibi. He wasn't saying he didn't do these things that he's accused of, really. What the defense's point is that they don't constitute the crimes that are being charged in this trial. And that's what they've said from opening statement, and that's what the theme they've carried through in every cross-examination and all the way to closing. I really think his defense is very strong and has given it their best shot, but it may not be totally successful.
All right, Richard Schoenstein, thank you so much for the time. I'm sure we'll invite you back on once we have more answers. Once they either rule or don't rule.
If we have more,
yes.
If we have more answers, you'll be the first to know. All right, Richard, thanks so much.
Eventually we will.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Richard. All right, obviously we're on Verdict Watch. As soon as we have an update, we'll bring it to you live on the air and streaming on CBS News New York.